Howdy. Slasher's Keep is a first-person roguelite, with a focus on its unique melee combat system, and the ability to use the environment during fights. The art style is a mixture of cartoonish 2D sprites and a 3D world. The gameplay loop is quite basic, not really any different from other roguelites. Start a run, find randomized loot, kill things, kill bosses, and climb the floors of Slasher's Keep. It really is the mechanics themselves that make the game stand out. So let's talk about them. As I've mentioned, Slasher's Keep has a strong focus on melee combat, and there are 4 types of melee weapons. Short swords, long swords, axes and hammers. These essentially just scale from high speed and low damage to being the other way around, though I believe hammers can't decapitate enemies. The most unique part of this game's melee combat is the directional parry, where you have to look in the direction of an incoming swing while blocking to avoid taking damage. Games like Mountain Blade and Mordhau are pretty much my niche, so this felt immediately intuitive to me. If you aren't used to these types of games, it might take a second to feel comfortable with the controls. But Slasher's Keep is way more approachable than other melee games in my opinion, so don't feel intimidated. Enemy attacks are randomized to keep fights dynamic, rather than just being a sequence of inputs to learn, which I think is great. You don't really have to use the combat system for the most part, because the movement is really quick. It's often actually better to just charge up swings while running around to do big damage and avoid hits. With all that loot that you pick up in this game, you must have a really big sack, and you do. By pressing F, you can perform a sack smack. This is an attack that does no damage but has a lot of knockback, allowing you to hit enemies into spikes or deep pits. If this feels a little like Dark Messiah to you, you're not wrong. Damien has stated that the game takes heavy inspiration from Dark Messiah. You'll also occasionally find pillars that you can break, which would then drop a bunch of heavy barrels onto your enemies. There are also kinetic wands, allowing you to essentially gravity gun your way through enemies. That's pretty much everything there is to melee combat, but you may have noticed something is missing. Stamina is completely absent, and for the better in my opinion. I'm going to rant, but I'll keep it short. Many games just seem to include stamina systems because they feel like they should, because other games have done it. But pretty often, it serves no purpose other than to slow the game down. I think Slasher's Keep would have been one of those games where it makes no sense to have stamina, so I'm very happy that there isn't any. Wands are also going to be a part of your fights, though they are mostly secondary as they have limited charges. They can be recharged with consumables, and if your wand ever gets completely emptied, it will break. Wands exist in a few different forms: arcane, fire, ice, lightning, piercing, and kinetic. There are of course more consumables, the usual healing potion, but also a brief invulnerability potion. There are also bombs and gear enchantments along with maps which will reveal key locations on your floor. Each level you gain 4 attribute points to put into strength, dexterity, or intelligence. Strength gives you damage and health. Dexterity gives you better armor scaling and crit chance, and intelligence gives you more experience, higher crit damage, and better deals from traders. Gear can also have attribute requirements, so while full strength is certainly fun, you're gonna need some other stats eventually. In my experience, dexterity scales very poorly, so it's better to go mostly strength, along with some intelligence for experience and better shops, as long as you have enough dexterity to wear the gear you want anyway. You also learn skills whenever you level up. These are passive effects ranging from exploding heads to eating spiders and being able to better manipulate your sack. You also gain a skill point, allowing you to perma-learn the skill, which lets you keep it after dying. I initially wanted to have a section here where I'd go on about every skill in the game, but I'm just not going to do that. Slasher's Keep has crafting, and I think it's implemented in a very cute way. Some floors can have a smithing room, allowing you to combine weapon components that you've found. The crafting menu lets you drag each component around, so you can make your weapon look however you want to. It is otherwise fairly straightforward. There are also quests, which you'll find as a face on the wall repeating prayers. Talking to him gives you a challenge to complete, which will reward you with a random item or a skill. You'll also occasionally find shrines. This is the game's gamba mechanic. Dropping any green or higher rarity item on this will give you back a different item of the same or lower rarity. Giving it a grey item will instead just damage you and call you stupid. I've mentioned that Slasher's Keep is a roguelite and not a roguelike. This is not always a distinction that matters much, as the genres are fairly loosely defined anyway, and roguelikes aren't even like Rogue anymore most of the time. But I think it does matter here, and I'm gonna go on a big long rant about it. One of the main distinctions I personally make between the two is that roguelites often have some kind of progression between runs and not just within runs, meaning that you might be stronger in your next run after dying in this one. This isn't really always a problem. It helps people who play more casually to still complete the game. The problem is when games purposefully outscale you, essentially forcing you to die so that you can come back in the next run and get a little further. In Slasher's Keep, this happens purely with stats, as you keep most of them, but I'd argue that games with purposefully unfair item or class unlocks also fall into this category, even if you could technically call them roguelikes. Slasher's Keep outscales you hard. Really, really hard. And I'm sure it's partially a skill issue, but I can't get past floor 6 or 7 even on my best runs before dying, because I start getting 2-tapped while enemies take 20 hits to kill. And the game knows it too. On certain floors, you'll find loot chutes or player chutes. You're supposed to toss your loot into these so that you can use it at the start of your next run after you die. Or, if you're on permadeath, using a player chute. Player chutes allow you to go back to floor 1, together with most of your stats, gold, perma-learned skills, and the items that you've put in the loot chute. This is pretty much a pseudo-death. I think you might begin to see the problem. You're either forced into dying, or choosing to use a chute, which, again, is functionally dying. This kind of adds nothing to the game, and only serves to make playthroughs longer by making you play the start of the game several times. This is even worse on permadeath runs, where you'll need to take a chute long before the game actually gets challenging most of the time. I want to talk about the game's actual content, enemies, maps, and such, so obviously, spoiler alert. On the first few floors, you'll encounter zombies, molerats, mobs, and mages. Zombies will just slap you. This can be parried. Molerats can either bite or throw a big punch. The bite can be parried, but the punch has to be avoided with movement, or can be interrupted with your sack. Mobs are flying ranged enemies, meaning they can't be sacked into holes. Ranged attacks generally can't be parried and need to be dodged. Mages are mostly stationary ranged enemies, and they usually spawn on elevated areas. The first mini-boss will also spawn on floor 1. This is the loot goblin. Not that one. He can't be damaged normally, and needs to be sacked into the spikes to be killed. Loot goblins can also spawn on later floors as well. The next enemies you'll encounter are the slimes, flying skulls, spiders, and a sword person. The slimes come in 4 varieties: acid, fire, loot, and blue. Acid slimes leave puddles of acid that can damage the player and other enemies. Fire slimes shoot projectiles and explode on death after a short delay. Loot slimes have loot, and blue slimes have blue. Spiders just jump at you. They can be parried. The sword dudes can also be parried, but they can also parry you and will follow up with a quick attack when they do. Flying skulls will usually do nothing, but occasionally turn their fire red, make a screaming sound, and then charge at you. You have to get out of the way of this. And not only do they do high damage if they hit you, but they'll also bounce off of you when they do, meaning you can't hit them. Mages can now also heal enemies along with buffing them. On floor 4 will be technically the second boss fight, but it feels more like the first real one. The boss is a giant spider. You might be tempted to attack it and see if you can parry it or outmaneuver it. You can't parry it, but you can technically dodge its attacks. However, your damage will be way too low to kill it in any reasonable time. After a while, it'll shoot out a bunch of eggs. If you don't break these, they will hatch into spiders. This is suboptimal and unwanted. If you break the eggs, they'll turn into a puddle of acid. You can lure the boss through this acid and usually kill it within 1 to 2 cycles. After this fight, you'll get to floor 5. It has a completely new look, and this is where you die. Floor 5 is rough. Loads of traps, and everything is just turbo strong. You'll now run into demons, red shield people, and new flying skull types. Demons will charge at you in a straight line. You have to dodge these and hit them after they've stunned themselves. Shields are good at blocking, so you'll have to wait for them to attack to get a hit in. You can either hold a charged swing and interrupt them when they try to hit you, or parry them to get a window. The new skull types can now triple shot, drip acid, or just shoot at you. They'll have a thing that they'll use to recharge their abilities once in a while. The best strat is to destroy this and then make them waste their attacks until they have none, then camp them out at the thing to kill them. Mages will now also be able to cast an ice beam, as well as blow you up with fire. Floor 5 through 8 are in my opinion the least fun, purely because of the amount of traps restricting your movement. Not much changes until floor 8, where we're put in a new environment again, rather unceremoniously with no boss fight. New puzzle mechanics, new spiders, and dual-wielding enemies. Spiders and dual-wielders can be parried, so they're not mechanically different, but still cool. You'll now find drawers that you can use to climb places, and will eventually find a hidden keypad. The code for this is usually in a wardrobe or stuck to a wooden pole. Completing puzzles, fighting more enemies, and climbing onto support beams, you'll eventually make it to the final boss, Ava. Just like with the previous boss, you can't really straight up fight her. You'll have to parry her and deal damage occasionally until she rages. After this, parrying her again will make her drop her weapons. When this happens, you can run towards the supports under Bindrick and start damaging them. Repeat until win, pretty much. Or don't. You could technically just use invulnerability potions if you've saved those up to ignore Ava and speedrun the boss fight. After completing the game, you can continue to do runs on that character, now with inflated numbers. You'll also unlock the ability to make dungeons bigger than 10 floors, and there are also a bunch of different races to unlock. I didn't talk about any of the story because I believe every race in the game has its own little story segments between floors. Actually, even carrying Ava out of Slasher's Keep in your sack gives you a different ending. You'll also find new items in your post-game runs that you could otherwise never find. But even with all that post-game content, I don't really get the urge to replay the game several times, which is sad for a roguelite. I think it's the lack of enemy variety and the length of the runs, along with the forced deaths, that make me more than content finishing it just once. With all that being said, Slasher's Keep is still one of my favorite games, because it dared to touch on melee combat in a PvE game. The term melee game is usually reserved for games like Mordhau, Chivalry, Mountain Blade, and a bunch more titles often associated with the smell of sweat and crusty socks on the floor. But Slasher's Keep shows us that melee games don't have to be try-hard and stinky. They can also just be casual fun, and I'd love to see more cool melee systems in other PvE games. Anyway, good luck getting out.